All right, Tony, we'll bring it up to the here and now. USC UCLA with the Trojans is a 16-point favorite at the Coliseum. And it's almost apropos that in a city with the stars that highlight the Tinseltown, both on the big screen, the small screen, and on the athletic surface, whatever it may be, that we have two-star quarterbacks in play, and that hasn't always been the case in this series. But Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, both at the collegiate level and projected at the next level to be two of the best.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a big focus of the network broadcast, with good reason. The two statistically are very similar, even though Rosen missed a game and a half with a concussion. Darnold's got 24 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. Rosen's got 21 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. UCLA is the number 8 passing offense in the country. So that is the marquee matchup in a series that has tons of marquee matchups over the years. This is the marquee right here, the two quarterbacks. Darnold has tended to be mistake prone because he's trying to force throws into spots that aren't there. Rosen, his mistakes have come from trying to do too much when UCLA has been struggling, when the offense can't run, and he's trying to put the entire game on his shoulders, and tends to make, I guess what they would call mistakes of effort. I think the big difference in this game, obviously, is UCLA is last in the country in rushing defense, and USC has Ronald Jones II, who, he's got 1,200 yards rushing and 14 touchdowns. So the key to the game is going to be UCLA's defense having any ability to, you're not going to stop Ronald Jones, but at least to hold him in check. And, that can be a tricky thing. UCLA's had a lot of injuries on defense, but last week in the Arizona State game, you saw some players who had not been getting playing time really start to step up. Greg Rogers, who's a freshman defensive lineman, Colin Samuel, a young defensive back, even Mossy Johnson. Johnson used to be a wide receiver at UCLA, but was lost in the rotation, was not getting much playing time, converted last year to defense, but didn't really see the field much, became a big-time special teams player this year, and because of injuries and suspensions and whatnot, they started gaining playing time the last 2 games, and actually his defense as a defensive back has been pretty critical. So it's going to be a lot of players having to step up beyond what their expectation levels have been. UCLA expects to get Jalen Phillips back at defensive end. He was out last week with a concussion and missed a couple games earlier in the year with a high ankle sprain. So it is going to be completely reliant on the UCLA defense to keep the Bruins in the game. Both teams are averaging just over 35 points a game. They're like 26th and 27th in the country in per game scoring average. So they're both right there. It's going to be about UCLA's defense keeping them in the game.
To your point, Tony, even in a 44-37 win over Arizona State last week, the Sun Devils just committed themselves to the run, and why not? 61 rushing attempts at almost just about 5 yards per carry against the Bruins. Now, on the flip side for UCLA, I know that we were having these conversations a year ago en route to a dismal 4-8 finish. Can't run, can't stop the run. Well, still can't stop the run, but at least there's a semblance of a running game, and there was quite a bit of balance in the offensive game plan last week. Josh Rosen throwing it 45 times, but the rushing game came through and was key in winning this one over Arizona State to get to a 5th win.
Yeah, and it was running back by committee, and I think that they're going to need to do that again this week. It was Bolo run for me. It was Soso Jamabo. It was Jalen Starks. Nobody was carrying a disproportionate load of the running game. They were also throwing to the running backs out of the backfield a little bit more than what they've been inclined to do. And I think they're going to need to repeat that. I think it's going to need to be a healthy running back by committee type of performance, so that you're not putting the offense on one style of running, because all 3 of them are very different running backs in terms of style. Ola Run for me gets to the outside and can sprint out a little bit better. Jamabo is very much up the middle. and Starks is a fullback size running back who actually can run with some speed to the edge. So I think you're going to need to get a healthy amount of carries for all three of them.
It's USC, it's UCLA at the Coliseum. The Bruins looking for that elusive 6th win to get to bowl eligibility. Of course, missing out on postseason play last year. They stand at 5-5 with a date against Cal following the game against USC for the Trojans. Not an official bye week during the course of playing 12 consecutive games, but they do have a bye week following the UCLA game, kind of an oddity that may not have helped them throughout the course of the season in playing 12 straight games, but now in their efforts going forward, as they have qualified for the Pac-12 championship game, that should serve as a nice little rest week, bye week, and game planning for Stanford, Washington, Washington State, whomever emerges from the North Division. So USC holding out hopes of a college football playoff. That's very remote, but USC firmly the Pac-12 South's best team and moving on to the Pac-12 championship game. But first, they want to take care of business against UCLA. So it means nothing in the standings, but everything in the city of Los Angeles between these two fierce rivals. And USC doesn't want to let this one slip away and limp off to the Pac-12 championship game with an upset loss to the hated Bruins. So
there's a great quote that I will interject here from Henry Red Sanders, who was the UCLA coach in the 1950s. Took them to their only national championship in 1954, and to this day, it goes on with what this rivalry is. So everybody across the country gets it. Red Sanders used to say, UCLA versus USC is not life and death. It is much more important than that.
That says it all right there. How can I follow that up with anything except to tell you, to get a fuller description of that, join Tony at Last Word on College Football. Look up his article. I don't know if it's right on the front page still.
Yeah, it is. What we did was a 2-part breakdown on the history of the game, really kind of touching on the off-field symbolism of the game, what the two schools are like and what they mean to each other, the long list of celebrities that have even graduated from both schools, and what the atmosphere is like. And then right about now or sometime shortly, part 2 will be published on the front page, which will be more of a look at the games themselves, some of the historic elements of the games. Things like, Troy Aikman, of course, is a college football Hall of Famer, a NFL Hall of Famer. UCLA finally got around to retiring his number last year. But to UCLA fans, he has an asterisk next to his name. He was 0-2 against USC. Couldn't beat Rodney Peete, even though Peete was allegedly playing with the measles in the 1988 game. However, you look at someone like Cade McNown, who was an NFL washout and a bit of a rogue character, and he is a legend at UCLA because he was 4-0 against the Trojans. So that's how things get looked at a little bit differently when it comes to this game.
Very true, very true. It's USC, it's UCLA, and it may not mean quite as much as it has in the past in some of the years that we have referenced throughout our conversation, but it's good enough for ABC to still say, hey, 8 o'clock prime time on the East Coast, we want to play USC, UCLA, and have that for the nation to behold. And again, the best looking game you're going to find throughout the college football season. If you're just talking about good looking video and fire it up on the HD for the 50 or 55 inches of television, it looks beautiful.
It's true.
All right, Tony, we appreciate the time and the conversation as always.
Glad to do it, Mark.